Hello and welcome to the Deep Sea Podcast, a punk take on a science podcast about everything deep sea. I'm Dr. Thom Lindley, curator of fishes at the National Museum of New Zealand, Te Papa Tongarewa, and with me, as ever, is the Professor Alan Jameson, OBE, director of the Deep Sea Research Centre at the University of Western Australia and lead scientist for Inkfish. We are back again. Hello, mate.
Hello.
I quite like your modest little hellos after that intro.
I know. Hello.
It's me, Butterman.
Yes. A bit of humility. That's what we need, a bit of humility. I know I'm great, but I'm not going to go on about it.
It just makes you greater, doesn't it?
It
That
does.
humility. Just look how humble.
I know.
How have you been? What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? The biggest thing since the last episode was going to Le Mans 24-hour hypercar racing.
For the deep sea.
Heart of the deep sea. Boss has got our race car team, so sometimes we get invited to strange things. So me and old mate got on a plane and flew all the way to France for 3 or 4 days, watched the 24-hour race, got hooked on hypercars, broom broom, went to the pits, all funded by Aston Martin. The whole time we're sitting there looking at each other going, I'm pretty sure we're supposed to be in marine science, but never mind, I'll take this.
Yes, I will have another champagne, thank you.
I will, yes, and I'll have some more complimentary nibbles. Watched lots of people race around circles and cars very fast, and then jumped on a plane and came home again.
It looks like F1 on steroids. It looks like a beefy, muscular F1.
I don't know, I don't follow motor racing, to be honest, but it was very cool. The hypercars are something else.
The big shiny cars went really fast.
Well, it doesn't look that fast. Well, I say that. They don't look that fast on TV. It does look fast, but it's like whatever. But then when you see them up close, you're like, ooh, hello. It's like these hypercars sound like rockets going off. I mean, it's just insane. But there's just the endurance of the whole thing and the relentlessness. Like you go to bed, go to the pub, go to bed, get back up, get a chauffeur driven back from the French chateau back to the racetrack, go out in there, and they're still just hammering it full throttle. They have been because it's
really?
Well, it's 24-hour race, right? The drivers
I
swap
didn't know
out,
that.
but it just goes on and on and on and on and on, and it's just relentless engines. One of my favourite moments was when a few of us got onto the Ferris wheel, including the swimmer from the sub team. And then we're just randomly on the top of a Ferris wheel in the middle of France going, I don't know why any of us are here. This is not what I was told in deep sea science was about, but I'll take it.
I did the Norfolk Island trip, collaboration between our museum, Museum of Australia, Sydney, and Auckland War Memorial Museum. And it was lovely. I was doing some diving, getting lots of diving in, got my 360 camera in as well, which was quite fun to... You'll appreciate this. I tried to make it neutrally buoyant. So I tried to use my squid lure frame and get the 360 camera like anchored to the bottom, but then floating up in the water. And so I got these 2 hard plastic floats, and that was just about making it neutral. But the best way of doing it was to then take one of the surface marker buoys and just fill it with enough air. And so I could really carefully adjust it. Yeah. But it just was a massive dick and balls floating in the middle of the in the middle of the sampling.
Great.
So every time I'd look over and there's just this big inflatable orange dick and balls hovering over, keeping an eye on us.
Excellent. At least the dive master on the boat knows exactly where you are.
Yeah, he's under the big orange dick. But got some really nice footage. We might try and share that once we've got that edited up. Yeah, so we're rotenone fishing. We're wafting this ichthyoside into the little nooks and crannies, and all the fish come out. You get to snuffle them up. It was good. 7 scientists on a 24-meter boat living on it. Very sick on day 1, but then found my sea legs. I did get to meet 2 tiger sharks. They did seem to particularly like me. I was there on both times they appeared, but I was sort of keeping an eye from a distance. But it was during the deco stop, which you feel very, very vulnerable because you're just out in blue water and this 3.5 meter long shark is sort of just deciding what it's going to do about you. And then I realized that apparently my European sensibilities for diving, which is be super visible, is not a very good idea in sharky places. I kept wondering, why is it always me? Why do they always sort of come my way? And then... one of the crew guys are just like, well, you've got yummy yellow. It's like, wow, your fins, yummy yellow. They'll love that.
Didn't tell you that before you go in.
No. I think somebody did actually mention it, but what am I going to do? Buy more fins in the sea?
True.
So yeah, all of my sort of be super visible, safety conscious Northern Hemisphere stuff just makes me delicious in the Southern Hemisphere. So I've got to watch out for that. But no, really nice trip.
Sounds like you had a very different trip than hypercar racing in Le Mans, enjoying delicious breakfast jambon every morning.
Yes. And we got like half a day to explore a bit of Norfolk Island, which was exciting. It's an Australian territory, but it's certainly like culturally distinct, as lots of the mutineers from the Mutineer on the Bounty ended up settling there. So there's some really interesting graves and weird history going on there. Yeah,
I'd love to see that. I've read all the stories of the mutiny and the bounty from both sides, from the mutineers to the whatever his name was, Captain Ding Dong.
Well, there's lots to be read there about Captain Ding Dong. Bit different. Again, not deep sea, but we're both spreading our net a bit wider.
Well, we haven't done anything deep sea on this episode so far.
It's coming though, I can feel it. But first, massive thank you to our patrons as ever who help to keep the show going. This month, we would like to thank Smorgindorg as our new Patreon. We also heard from listener Georgia, who wrote about Alan's Wandering Anemones, just to let us know that they also have them in South Africa. The spinnaker anemones, which inflate their foot like a kind of sail and then float from place to place. And then here in New Zealand, we have the wandering anemone, which you can see when you're scuba diving off the coast or just snorkeling even. And they get into all sorts of places. They're up on like kelp fronds and things. Just a reminder that by joining the Patreon, you also get access to the Discord, and just thought we'd give you a little summary of what's going on there with the community on there. So we've had various travel photos shared, including the deep ocean exhibit at Mbari, a trip to New York Aquarium, which allowed me to retell my tale of the masturbating walrus. But yes, there was a famous masturbating walrus in the time that I was volunteering there. Dr. Todd Bond, old mate, gave a talk at the University of Queensland and was accosted by one of our fans wearing a Deep Sea Podcast t-shirt. And I liked getting that from both sides, because Todd sent me the picture of an audience member in a Deep Sea Podcast t-shirt, and then the Deep Sea Podcast listener posted it like from the other side on the Discord. So I quite like that. That felt like closing the loop. Some folks are beginning to build a bespoke sonar mapping drone to scan a nearby lake. The Supergiant wiki page has been updated and a few extra points added by listener Sean, and with the help from Alan, it's now up to a good article status. I didn't realize there was such a hierarchy, but
Nor did I.
that's a good thing. We have confirmed that a life-size colossal squid could be hand-blown in glass. That was an important little bit of investigation that was going on. Got pictures of the largest blown glass bottle and seeing if we could make a colossal squid out of it. Deep sea inspired board games as well, and a Kickstarter campaign for one called Endeavour Deep Sea Uncharted Waters that some people were excited about, and just general deep sea memes and chatting about the deep sea. So if you fancy joining that community and having a chat about those topics or whatever you've got going on, if you join Patreon or one of the paid tiers, you get access to the Discord server and can have a little chat with us all. And that's it. We can dive into some news. So last episode, I mentioned that hero of the deep sea community, Megan, is now helping out with the show, and she's also involved in our first news item. Once again, I was one of the judges on the Under the Sea virtual art exhibit, but rather than me talking about it, I thought we'd give Megan a chance to introduce herself and also talk about the art show.
Hey friends, it's me, Megan. If you're a part of the Patreon Discord community, then we're already familiar. You might have seen my deep sea inspired art posts on Instagram on my Studio MBJ account, or maybe this is our first time connecting. As a fellow deep sea enthusiast, I'm thrilled to be here, letting you know that I'm now helping out with some of the support aspects for the podcast. I started listening to the Deep Sea Podcast just over 2 years ago, and it was a pivotal moment for me. It opened up a world I was totally unaware of, and I'm now utterly fascinated by. I will always remember hearing the moon analogy episode for the first time and laughing out loud in public. It's a brilliant rant from our favorite Professor Alan, and in my opinion, one of the best episodes. I'm a convert to the science community, but I've been an artist and nature fact collector my entire life. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts and experience in writing, designing, and publishing. I'm primarily a painter working in acrylic on canvas. One of my most recent paintings, titled Mariana Snailfish, which was based on a photo Professor Jameson took, was the winner of an exemplary category in the Moku Under the Sea online exhibition. This painting of our favorite, adorable, jelly belly Hadal snailfish was considered an excellent example of restoring the viewer's relationship with the ocean. You can see this painting and all the incredible work included in the annual exhibition at mokuartstudio.com. Don't worry if you didn't write that down. I'll add it to the show notes for you. I'm honored to have been selected as the category winner, especially since the painting is one of 16 that will be published in a deep ocean children's book, written and illustrated by yours truly, and releasing in 2026. Dr. Thom fact-checked the book for me while on the Falkor 2 in Antarctica. Photos exist of my book being edited with icebergs in the background. This is now my coolest moment story I pull out at parties. I'm beyond thrilled to contribute to the podcast and collaborate with Thom and Alan. I can't think of anything I would rather do than support something so impactful to my life. I wouldn't be creating artwork to raise awareness for the deep sea if it wasn't for the Deep Sea podcast and the Patreon Discord community. Speaking of, will I see you over there? In the meantime, I have an episode graphic to create, so bye for now.
I was supposed to be a judge on that, but I've never got around to answering the emails.
I know, I saw. I didn't want to say that out loud.
I apologise profusely. It was a busy month. And he says after just talking about pink champagne and Le Mans 24 racing.
Hey,
you
that's busy.
Yeah,
That's
busy.
busy.
It was a very busy week. Yeah.
There was a nice paper on anglerfish evolution, sort of where they came from as a group and how they radiated from a benthic species up into the pelagic water column as we know and love them. But rather than me talking about that as well, I'm outsourcing a lot this episode. Here is the author Alex describing his paper.
Hi, Alan and Thom. I'd like to first thank you guys for hosting the Deep Sea podcast. It's such a unique and holistic look at the deep sea that I genuinely don't think it could have been done better. As a quick introduction, my name is Alex Miley, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Kansas Biodiversity Institute, which, funny enough, is about as far from the ocean as you can get here in the US, but evidently that hasn't stopped me from working on deep sea fishes. In our new paper based on my master's work, we use a total evidence phylogenetic approach where we combine morphology, mitochondrial DNA, and large-scale genomic data called ultra-conserved elements to build the most comprehensive evolutionary tree of anglerfishes and their allies. We found, in comparison to other anglerfish lineages, that the deep-sea ceratoid anglerfishes are actually more closely related to a group called the coffin fishes, another group of anglerfishes that are red, they're on the seafloor in deep water habitats, and they're kind of weird looking. And we also found that the common ancestor of all anglerfishes more than likely evolved from a benthic species that was occurring in mesopelagic waters. Some lineages actually moved into shallower waters like frogfishes and batfishes, but only the ceratoid anglerfishes became fully pelagic and went into deeper waters. We also confirmed that anglerfishes are actually more closely related to pufferfishes and triggerfishes, things like mola mola compared to other groups. And they actually share several morphological traits, such as a reduction in several cranial bones, an absence of other bones, a lack of operculum, which is the bony plate that covers their gills. And we also found, which is my favorite, that all anglerfishes have hinged teeth that fold backwards, which is perfect for gripping any slippery prey. And among these results, we also conducted a geometric morphometric analysis where we compared the silhouettes of anglerfishes against one another. We also did some taxonomic work where we proposed a new subfamily of frogfishes. And overall, this study gave us a more clear picture of how extreme environments drive the evolution of the anglerfishes, a very enigmatic group.
Oarfish, the disaster fish, the sea serpent, have been turning up everywhere. We got one in Tasmania and then two actually in New Zealand within the space of a couple of weeks. We waited for a little while just to make sure there wasn't going to be a huge earthquake before we embarrassed ourselves, and then wrote a little bit of a blog and a few news pieces on their association with harbingers of doom. But rather than go into too much detail on that, I will save that for later on when we have a coffee with Andrew, because that's what we've been chatting about. DOSI, the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative, good friends of ours. We've recommended to all of our listeners multiple times that they subscribe to the DOSI newsletter, but now DOSI has a podcast and they're more policy focused, a bit less silly, probably a bit more serious than us. So if you're loving your deep sea podcasting, then be sure to check out Think Deep, and there'll be some links in the show notes. Marine snow in carbon transport. Researchers at Mbari have sequenced the DNA of 800 individual particles of marine snow. That sounds a fun job. And found two groups of plankton that can be used to estimate the amount of carbon being transported to the deep oceans. An indicator species, really, rather than having to measure everything. You can use these as an indicator of how much carbon's going down. And the knowledge of individual plankton's ability to transport carbon will provide a sort of baseline for satellite monitoring and carbon sequestration. So basically, as we figure out and try and work out the maths and the models for these huge events, because it's the scale of the deep sea. Even a tiny deviation, once you scale it up to 2/3 of the planet, the estimates have really big error bars. So really nailing down these indicators are how we're going to figure that out.
Selicosuria, a genus of sea spiders, have been found to host epibiotic methane oxidizing bacteria which they farm and consume. Sea spiders being the pycnogonids or the Panthopoda. Yeah, big hit on YouTube recently with the old sea spiders. Got over 9 million people watched that one. Anyway, this particular one has been found somewhere about 400 meters, something like that. But anyway, the fact that they're farming methane to eat it, I suppose, eat the bacteria off it, is previously unknown. The relationship highlighting yet another manner in which methane carbon is moved through direct microbial transfer in the deep ocean. Spiders, which are not really spiders.
No.
In fact, in many respects, are worse than spiders when you see them close up, and it's quite good that they're at the bottom of the sea. I wouldn't fancy it.
Giant Antarctic ones are, giant orange pipe cleaners. Yeah, no thank you. No thank you. The ancient oceans were filled with squid. Filled. Chock full. New fossil scanning technique developed in Japan has completely digitized rocks with embedded fossils rather than cracking them open and potentially damaging them, and allows researchers to access the fossils inside. They found 1,000 fossilized cephalopod beaks inside the late Cretaceous rock, of which 263 were squids, and about 40 different species have never been seen before.
But they've never been seen before because they're inside a rock.
I guess so. So new species, new paleo species of squid. And the squid beak fossils far outnumber those of the ammonites, which the era is famous for, and bony fissures in these samples, indicating that squids were incredibly common in the ancient oceans, or this was a fossilized whale stomach.
Yes, there is that.
I want to see how closely packed these beaks are, if they're a bit too closely packed.
Is the whale stomach hypothesis yours, or did they talk about that?
No, it's me. That's me.
Yeah, that's quite a good point, isn't it?
Thinking about places where you get lots and lots of squid beaks.
Yeah.
One of them, the squid isn't winning.
Who's this week's guest then, Thom?
For this week's guest, Mesophotic Reefs. So it's a bit on the shallow side for us, but it does cross into official deep sea-ness. But I think there's a lot of interesting parallels because it has that same sort of overlooked, undersampled, deeper than the lovely fluffy corally reef where you can scuba dive and collect things, which is really well studied. But then once you're going deeper, people just decide to go really deep. Nobody's doing this little fringe between the shallow and deep, because as soon as you've got something like rated to 2,000-3,000 meters, you go to 2,000 and 3,000 meters. There's not that much off the shelf stuff that encourages this area. So it's kind of getting overlooked. It's an area that Kai T of Kai the Fish Guy fame has started working in, and he was on the vessel with me in Norfolk Island. So we got chatting about it, and I was staggered at the reach of this research, and it sort of cross-cuts the aquarium trade and fish collecting and lots of really, really weird little tangents. So enjoy the rambling narrative as we explore Mesophotic reefs. I have been reunited with Dr. Kai T, a taxonomist and systematic ichthyologist, means a fish person, same as me, affiliated with the University of Sydney and the Australian Museum Research Institute, and we got to hang around on a tiny boat for a while.
Hello, Thom. It's been nice hanging out with you on Norfolk Island in a tiny boat. No, it was really good. I was actually telling Amanda that in retrospect, I really enjoyed it because, I mean, the fish portion of it was great, but it was also really nice spending time with our colleagues and friends from across the straits, whatever you want to call it that, in New Zealand. So yeah, thanks for having me.
It was good networking, wasn't it? It was nice going.
It was great. Oh yeah.
You did make some demands though. So I'm not even a gin drinker, but I have a gin.
Oh,
cheers, sir.
I do have my gin. Cheers. Well, I feel like because we didn't really get a chance to do this on the boat. We got off the boat and straight on the plane. Also, the shops were closed, and then I didn't get to see you and everyone else again. So this is kind of an extension of that. I feel like in some ways we're still in Norfolk Island.
This is the after party. You hadn't properly sort of rounded that out.
No, yeah, you're right.
You are a curator of the beautiful things. You certainly have favorite fishes and take some absolutely amazing shots. Actually, I should include that in the intro. You are known online as Kai the Fish Guy.
On Twitter and Blue Sky, and also on Instagram.
We'll put them into the show notes, but really, really beautiful photography of some beautiful reefy fishes. You know, all that gaudy, colorful stuff that doesn't interest us who like brown and gray things from the deep sea.
I've been told on many occasions, actually, that I'm a bit of a fish snob, which I have to say.
I saw it in action.
Well, things that live in coral reefs are really beautiful.
It blows your calibration. Like, your standards are so much higher than the rest of us.
Well, yes. But also, I am proud to say that the last 3 papers that I've written, they're all of brown and yellow fishes. So they have less than 3 colors.
Well done. Well done. So recently you've been heading a little bit deeper, and that was an area I really wanted to chat to you about. You've started mesophotic sampling.
Yeah, so my interest in Mesophotic Reefs kind of it's been a slow burn. It's not something that I started my research career or interest in immediately. I'm really interested in biodiversity and taxonomy and also descriptions and the systematics of coral reef species. Inadvertently, I've ended up kind of working in the realm of mesophotic coral reef species just because a lot of the undescribed biodiversity happens to be concentrated there. In the recent maybe 3 or 4 years, I've focused my efforts in trying to better understand mesophotic coral reef biodiversity, particularly in Australia, and kind of reaching out to lots of people that have pioneered and trailblazed this corner of coral reef science and try and get that collaborative networking going on here.
For anyone who's new to this term, we're starting to lose the light. We're going into the deeper areas of coral reefs. And we've quite often thought of the coral reef as sort of a little bit of a cap on the top. And because it goes beyond diving or easy diving, we kind of forget that actually there's layers and structure, and the coral reefs are actually much deeper than we give them credit for. So whereabouts are you, and what changes as you go deeper in these reefs?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like you said, a lot of people kind of have this idea that coral reefs are just bustling shallow water paradise that happens in the snorkely bits that you go on your holidays for. And they are true. Most of what we know of coral reefs happen in that 0 to 10, 20 meter range. I'm more interested in the biodiversity of mesophotic coral reefs, which begins somewhere around 30 meters and they extend down to about 150, 200 meters. If you literally translate it, it means middle light, sometimes also known as a twilight zone. It's where light is very attenuated and very diminished, but not entirely absent. So you still have a bit of photosynthetic organisms growing there. You have a lot of crustose coralline algae, especially in parts of the reefs where the water is really clear. You can still see halometer algae growing close to 100 meters. And you get a lot less reef building stony corals, and you get a lot more encrusting sponges and non-photosynthetic corals, and lots of the calcium carbonate matrix of reefs that have, died off in the past, forming the vast structure of it. And the fish community here is quite remarkably different as well. Yeah, you do get species that live in shallow waters kind of entering the mesophotic realm, but you do have quite a niche assemblage of fishes that are found in all the depth strata. And because of where it's situated, it's a little bit too deep for conventional scuba diving, but it's also too shallow for trawling and extractive methods. And also because it's so complex, it's really hard to get a beam throw down there. It kind of sits in this weird, awkward zone where it's just really hard to get to.
It's not necessarily more biodiverse, it's just a bit we've missed. Awkward middle ground that we haven't studied here.
Yes, a lot of the new species that we're discovering now, they're really just endemic to that narrow band of coral reef habitat between the kind of 30 to 150 or so meters. And so if you're one of those few people in the world rebreather diving, entering the mesophotic realm and looking at the fish that live there, it's an amazing thing. And so I'm working with a lot of these people that do that, and also with a lot of ROV and BRUF data just to kind of get an idea of what lives down there.
How can you characterize the sort of flavor of these? Are they shallow species that are radiated down? Are the things coming up from below? Where do they hail from?
So it's very interesting. A lot of the families are, families that we recognize. I think by far, serranids, labrids, pomacentrids, your damsels and your angels and your butterflies, your wrasses, all the things that we come to know and love from shallow water coral reefs, they're down there too. But the species are different. You get a lot of species that are really endemic to this deeper part of the reef. And so you don't see them in shallow water reefs. So you know that it's a wrasse, but it's just not a species or even a genus that you might be familiar with. So there are elements of similarity and familiarity, but then there's also, and the excitement comes from just looking at something and just going, oh my God, that is something that I've not seen before, snorkeling or diving. And then you also have your pelagics, like your carangids and your tunas and, some of these other more generalist species that just kind of go up and down the depth strata regardless of kind of habitat constraint. You're walking that really narrow tightrope of new and something that's kind of completely unknown. And, I want to reiterate that deep is a really relative term, right? Like for someone that studies coral reefs, the mesophotic coral reefs are quite deep. But for someone who studies hadal fishes, like yourself, you're probably laughing at 150 meters.
We've got the sort of vertical endemic structure. What's it like laterally? Is this island biology, or are you finding sort of the same species on different chains?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. That really depends on the kind of habitat we're talking about. Most of the Mesophotic reefs that I've been fortunate enough to study, either remotely or through collaborations, all the reefs that are targeted by specialist Mesophotic research biologists or specialists, they occur on really nice drop-offs. So, you're looking at either continental shelf drop-offs or atolls, and you have these really nice vertical walls that just plunge down to 200 meters, and you see this really nice change. But other times you get really, really long sloping gradients. I would probably say that the biggest difference in species assemblage occurs with the kind of habitat community. With really gentle, long drop-offs, you kind of tend to get more rhodolith beds or halometer algae patches. And the type of fishes that live in these areas differ quite significantly, actually, from those that live on really deep vertical drop-offs. With the latter, you tend to get lots of oceanic currents, and so you get a lot of very clear water. You get lots of different serenite diversities, whereas in the really gentle open beds, you tend to get more wrasses. Well, yeah, but that's the exciting thing, right? Because we don't really know a lot about mesophotic habitat. So every time we encounter one, it's a whole new surprise for us. And the amount of time that we spend down there as well is quite limited if you're diving, for example. And so we're mostly limited to observing these habitats with ROVs or BRUVs. Those two have their limitations. If you're a tiny little fish living in the reef, you probably want to run away if you see a giant...
a predator-shaped thing.
Yeah, with 50,000 watts of light just blaring at you.
Let's talk a little bit about the methodology, because that's something that's really fascinated me. And it's weird. It makes me anxious. Like, I can't do computer game levels with a time limit. It just stresses me out. If people are collecting on rebreathers, if they are diving, they are getting just like a 9-hour dive with 15 minutes on the bottom, something like that.
Yeah, so it really depends on how long their bottom time is, I think. Like I said, I don't want to speak too much for the actual people that do these dives. And so I would just kind of maybe give it an example of what the divers are doing on my last Mesophotic expedition in the Coral Sea. So again, I want to reiterate, I don't do any of these dives. I'm not technically trained to do a closed circuit rebreathers. You need a lot of skill and discipline, and I don't have that yet. And so I work a lot with people that do. So my last expedition to the Coral Sea, I had Dr. Louise Rocha, who's the curator of fishes at the California Academy of Sciences, and he's done lots of pioneering work with closed circuit rebreathers. And so he was part of a team of 4 divers that were diving and collecting fishes for us on our trip. And so they kind of, I think, limited themselves to 8 or 9 minutes of bottom time, no more, which, would result in anywhere between 4 to 5 hours, I think, total time of diving, which then increases exponentially the longer you spend at the bottom. So if you look at their dive profiles, it's a pretty quick drop to 100 meters or, wherever they want to be. And they'll spend a little bit of time there. And then the rest of the 4 hours would just be decompression. And they spend a lot of time actually in the shallower bits. So they do like an ascent to 60 or 70. They spend a bit of time there. But if you look at their dive profiles, it's about 2/3 of it is spent above 20 meters, which is why, a lot of times when we're picking the dive sites, they prefer picking areas with really sharp drop-offs so they can follow the reef wall up and look at other things and photograph fishes or study kind of the shallow water compositions on the way up. Whereas if you were to dive in a mesophotic community that's characterized by really, really long, gentle slopes, you might have to do 5 hours of blue water decompression, which is not fun.
I get bored at 5-minute deco stops and blue water.
Yeah. So, so the Coral Sea was great because the water was so clear. You could actually see them down to 70 meters. You could see them pottering around, photographing things. And it was just, not a day goes by where I just don't think about how amazing these people are and the kind of work that they're doing is just remarkable. To kind of answer your initial question, the methodology. Yeah. So, there's an element of actually going down, collecting in the field. We're looking at museum specimens. We're collating video and photographic data from ROVs and BRUVs. And then, we're getting bycatch from longline fishing, aquarium fish collectors, which is a whole other kind of worms. So we're just kind of pulling together whatever we can because, as you know, mesophotic ecosystems are not easy to study. Particularly in Australia, we have a bit of a deficit here. Just all coming together now and getting a better idea of what lives down there.
I'm glad you mentioned finding things within the collection. It's quite sexy and exciting right now to find new species, and people have this idea that it's going out there and discovering things. But I keep telling students that actually the best place to find a new species is in a museum collection, and it will probably be labeled as such. I remember finding a pricklefish in the Copenhagen collection that just said new species, new genus, ? And it's right there. It's the time to write it up.
I should also plug and give a shout out to Hidetoshi Wada, who's the new fish curator at the Kanagawa Prefectural Museum in Japan. And look, I'm the fish curator at the Australian Museum, and I love my museum and I love our fish collection. But I'll tell you something, Hidetoshi's collection, the KPM collection in Japan, honestly, I'm like blushing thinking about it because I'm so obsessed with the way they work. Go to fishpicskahaku.com. Everything in their collection is photographed, labeled, and cataloged. And if you just type anything like Labrador spur, it will literally spit out a catalog of everything that is unknown with a photo and a location that honestly, it's like online shopping for new species. It is just the most amazing database ever. And I think it just really kind of ties it back to the power of collections and, the importance of collections, because lots of these things are just sitting on shelves unknown. Think about that. There's actually way more new species out there than there are people working on them. It's not that we're doing this amazing, God's work and discovering and naming these. Such a privilege. It's just that there are not enough of us doing it. And so it's honestly open to whoever that wants to come in and do it.
Talking about the stress of having that short period of time at the bottom, like how do they do it? Like I'm fairly good. Both me and you have a little bit of history in the sort of aquarium trade, and I'm quite good at outthinking a fish and the different swimming styles and how to catch different ones. But no, not with 9 minutes. Not a day's work rendering down into 9 minutes of fish catching.
Yeah. So I've tried to catch fish out of my aquariums before, naughty ones, and doing it in the confined space is hard enough. Doing it in the wild with 9 minutes and the pressure of everything around you happening, and no shade to everyone else, but I think Tim Bennett and Brian Green, I reckon, are the two best fish collectors I know. And so I spoke to Brian at IPFC recently, and Brian and I, we've known each other for a long time. He's affiliated with the University of Hawaii, and he did a lot of his early forays into mesophotic diving with like literally Jack Randall and Richard Pyle. So, he's one of the deep water fish gods of the world. And then I work quite closely with a mate of mine from Cairns. He's a commercial fish collector. His name is Tim Bennett. I reckon Brian and Tim are quite close in terms of prowess to collect fishes. And on our trip, Tim collected close to 16 individual specimens within an 8-minute window at 140 meters. So that's basically 2 fish a minute. I have a video of it. I'll send it to you after this podcast, and you feel free to put it in if you want. But it basically shows him collecting a species of Bromius that we're trying to figure out if it's new or not. He was telling me after the trip, if you have to chase them, it's over. You have to somehow get them to swim into your net. If you try and catch one and they swim away, just take it on the chin, cut your losses, and go for the next thing.
What a learning curve, though. Learning at 8 minutes at a time. No, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to catch a dead fish out of water, so I don't know how. Honestly, they are just so impressive.
Well, I did want to touch on the sort of commercial aquarium trade, because you've got quite a lot of history there. You're a really keen fish keeper. You were actually quite involved in tying science and aquarist hobbies together, and you did a lot of writing. And what was your pseudonym at the time? Because there's lots of articles out there.
Oh, yeah, Lemon was my pseudonym. This is a part of my life that I've not thought about in a long time. Yeah, so I started out, I had a very unconventional and non-linear career path. I didn't finish university and go into science immediately. I kind of did, longer than I should really, a stint where I did a lot of aquarium magazine and blogging writing. As you said, I was a really, really avid fish keeper when I was in my teenage years. And I spent a lot of my time on forums, and I got approached by a friend of mine who asked if I wanted to write for him. And back then he was kind of the editor-in-chief of this blog magazine called Reef Builders. And I said yes. I spent years of my life just writing about everything I wanted to know about the aquarium trade and fishes. Who's keeping what? Who's collecting what? What are the latest equipment available to keep your tank alive? What are the Japanese buying? What are the Americans buying? What's the latest rare fish in town? And it was such a crazy world, because it's not so much now, because I think, just the way the hobby and industry has changed. But back then it was this real melting pot between science and like academia and hobby. I remember going to a lot of trade shows and aquarium fish conferences. Actually, I met Dr. Luis Rocha for the first time at one of these conferences, MACNA, the Marine Aquarium Conference of North America. It was a conference in Denver, and I met him for the first time there. I was so starstruck. I was not even in school yet. I was just a boy writing about fishes, and then here comes Luis Rocha, and I just had a fangirl moment. I'm like, oh my God, you're the guy that's, describing all these things, and you're collecting deep and blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of things that people say about the aquarium trade, and some of it comes with merit and some others are a bit of a misconception. But, you can buy species that haven't been described yet, completely brand new species that just enter the aquarium trade, misidentified as something else that it, kind of resembles vaguely. And I guess it's, harps back on the importance of taxonomy and why it is important to name and catalog species and actually do the descriptions properly so that, we know what's down there, we know what's, being collected and taken out from our reefs. But it just goes to show the kind of stuff that you're able to find in the aquarium trade. And that was just kind of how I got started with my love for fishes. Now that I'm on the other side of things, doing research from an academic perspective, I still see a lot of value in the aquarium trade, mostly in educating aquarists about where their fishes are coming from, what's being taken out of the reefs. Because a lot, like I said, and it still happens today, like a lot of species that are taken out of the reefs, they're not properly identified. And so, you're collecting things that are brand new to science when they get collected and sold. And sometimes when they die, it's about making sure that these specimens don't get flushed down the toilet. They get put in the freezer and, they get sent to a museum. And so we can do something about it. So there's this whole world that's out there that I used to be a part of. And admittedly, I don't really do a lot of that now, but I still think about it sometimes.
There's a bit of classical training and there's a bit of rigor involved, but there's no bar to entry. And I'm fascinated by the quality of like pseudo taxonomy, like the L numbers. The loricarid catfish, the spoon-tooth catfish, it's not the binomial names, but that is such thorough and accurate species descriptions. You can buy whole catalogs and nothing has a scientific name. It's all L numbers.
I wasn't actually planning on like touching freshwater because it is a whole other like world on its own. But like, if you want to talk about new species entering the trade, literally everything from the Amazon is, yeah, you're right. There's so many undescribed species of loricarid catfish that it's all just L numbers now. There's a lot of negative connotation to this, and I don't intend it to be that way, but armchair taxonomists out there, and they know their stuff, man. Like a lot of them know because they see them in real life and they actually have exposure to specimens. If you're working in an aquarium and you see hundreds of these fishes come in every day, chances are you're seeing more of these specimens in life than some of the taxonomists that work in museums. I can tell you with 100% confidence that a lot of authorities out there have never seen the species that they work on alive. And so like, a lot of these people have perspectives that we don't have. So coming in from the aquarium trade and now transitioning into doing this from an academic point of view, there's so much that I've learned from just being an aquarist and being someone who's obsessed with going to the fish store every week. I used to go to every single trade show and every single pet show and every single aquarium conferences all over the world just to look at fish.
Some of those whole traders are amazing, and just to see everything lined up in amazing condition, and then it's like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
There's a tank full of them and I don't know what they are.
Yeah. And I still have my tentacles in every single one of these pies. Like I said, I'm not really active in the whole industry and hobby scene anymore, but I keep my finger on the pulses because you see like really amazing thing come into the trade and you're like, that is, even if it's not a new species, that could be a specimen that's really, really valuable to museum collections. Something that might be a common aquarium fish to you might be really rare in our collections. And even just getting tissue samples is really hard. I'm very happy with where I'm at the moment, having my 10 years of being an aquarium fish nerd and now being a fish taxonomy nerd and seeing the two worlds meld together. Those were some of the best years of my life, I think.
It draws a parallel to me that we get indigenous knowledge and it's the same thing. Why on earth would you not listen to the people who've been looking at this stuff for so long? Why would you close your mind to that knowledge?
Yeah.
They've seen a lot more than you. They've been here a lot longer than you.
Yeah.
Be open that there's going to be data in there that's really valuable to you.
Oh, absolutely. I've learned through personal experience to never say no to the stray Instagram DM from that 16-year-old kid that's like, I bought this in my fish store today. I think it's this species. I'm like, I want to hear all about it. Show me all the photos. Tell me about it. My DMs are open. Send me fish photos. I love it. And there are so many, dude, I wish a podcast was 10 hours long because I will literally talk you to sleep. Because this year's IPFC, the sheer number of students that showed up, students from Japan and Taiwan, they've made different. And when I say made different, I mean, I have 1,000 photos of like this rare eel that no one has ever seen before in their lives, just on their iPhones. And they're writing entire like revisions and drawing head paws. And they're just like, 17-year-old school kids. It's just the passion and the drive coming through with these young kids. Honestly, it's just so inspiring. If you're a kid out there who's just really into fishes, like, good on you.
You're in good company. There's been a few of us who've made a career out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And just for anyone listening, that's the Indo-Pacific Fish Conference, which has just been...
The IPFC is like the Oscars of the fish conferences.
And to link it back around, these aquarium traders now have an interest because rarity, because there are real like high roller collectors who want the thing that no one else has, or want to figure out the husbandry of something no one else has been able to keep.
You have your really hardcore collectors that just want to own a fish that has never been collected before. I don't know if you know what a peppermint angelfish is. A seriously almost unbelievably beautiful angelfish with white and red alternating bars. It looks like a barbershop pole. It's found only in French Polynesia in reefs deeper than 70 meters, commonly around 100 meters. My old mate, Rufus Kimura, who lived in Hawaii, he was the first person that Chip Boyle from Cook Islands collected some of the first few for the aquarium trade. And then Rufus subsequently went and collected more. And it kind of opened up this whole market for Japanese collectors and other, fish nerds that wanted a peppermint angel. And because they lived only in areas where you have to kind of enter the Mesophotic realm with rebreather diving, a lot of these aquarium collectors just kind of went into that realm of being deep water fish collectors. So one of my friends in Cairns, he works for an aquarium export company called Cairns Marine. So he does a lot of collecting commercially for the hobby. And he's one of the few aquarium collectors that are doing it deep. So he does deep rebreather fish collecting. I've known him for a long time. And when I was putting together my team for my Mesophotic trip, I asked if he wanted to come along and collect for me, but for science, because I needed someone, in Australia with the expertise, not only when it comes to collecting deep water reef fishes, but also just knowing the area like the back of your hand, like, because he's a native Queenslander. He knows the reefs better than most people. And so having him on board was really, really good.
But I know Mbari did a really nice exhibit recently of some deeper things that haven't been kept before, some snailfish and things. Obviously, you've got to almost decompress the fish as well, take them up as slowly as the divers at very least.
Mbari and the Okinawa Churami aquariums, I think I might be wrong here, but they're one of the few, I was going to say the only two, but they're one of the few public aquariums in the world that actually display deep water fishes. And they do it by putting them in a decompression chamber of the collection and kind of slowly adjusting the pressure over a long period of time to get them acclimated. For a lot of these deep water aquarium fish collectors, for the hobby, I mean, they don't have a industrial size hyperbaric chamber, but a friend of mine who was part of Louise Rocha's team built a DIY decompression chamber out of aquarium parts, acrylic parts, and a pressurizer. And it's amazing. They published a paper on it.
Oh, can you send a link?
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Yeah, that'll be in the show notes.
And basically, you collect the fishes at depth in situ. You put them in there. You keep the pressure the same all the way up to surface, and then you slowly kind of equilibrate the pressure. And I think they did a pretty good job, because the California Academy of Sciences has the Steinhardt Aquarium, where they started kind of exhibiting a subset of everything they collected from their Mesophotic trips. So they were displaying things like Tosinoides and Sakura and some of the other deep water Bodianus and species that you don't really get to see in the aquarium trade because they tend to die from barotrauma. But the proof of method and the proof of concept that those chambers worked was them kind of displaying a lot of those fishes in the Steinhardt Aquarium. And then the other way of doing it, obviously, is you collect them at depth and then you bleed them. You bleed the swim bladder with a hypodermic needle. You basically bring them up. So because you've already bled the gas in the bladder, it doesn't explode on the way up. And then it's a matter of kind of just letting them heal slowly. Obviously, the risk is a lot higher, but that's one way of doing it. Another way is just to bring them up really, really slowly over a span of days in a bucket and a pulley system. Some of the Japanese collectors, the long line collectors, they put a little pinhole camera at the end of their lures. You can see what they're catching and they reel it up. If they don't want it, they leave it. If it's something that they want, they bring it up and then we put it in a chamber. And that's what Okinawa Churami Aquarium does. It's amazing. Honestly, some of the craziest days of my reef builder's career, you want to call it that, as a kid writing blogs and magazine pieces, I would go to Japan, Osaka, and meet a Japanese aquarist. So I was going to preface that. I'll send him an email first. I'm like, hey, I heard that you've recently been put in touch with this collector and you've bought this species and you're keeping it. Can I come and have a look at it? And it would just be a very unassuming dentist. I'll walk into his office and who have an aquarium at the back with Mesophotic fishes, Balenoperca parli, Lipropoma latifasciatum, like all these amazing things that you only see. And I would call them book fishes because I would only have ever seen them in a book.
I like book fishes.
Yeah, they're book fishes. And I would go in his dental office and look at his tank and I'm like, you have this fish. Like, how do you have that on display? And it's like, oh yeah, I paid this guy and he collected it for me. And then I'll just take pictures. And I kind of did this thing for a long time where I just wrote articles about, and it's incredible. The resources are incredible. Even if it's not just for specimens, it's just knowing what they look like in life, their live coloration. It's just amazing.
Not getting even into the behavioral stuff. How do they reproduce? What are their breeding colors?
A lot of amazing things out there, man. I want to tell you a story about probably my best encounter as a 19-year-old kid doing fish nerd things around the world and writing stories about rare fish. This book, do you know this book? Angel Fishes of the World by Kiyoshi Endo. Angel Fishes of the World is one of those really old reference books. There's lots of really nice pictures of rare angelfishes in here. And the cover, that's a peppermint angelfish. I went to this house in Japan. My friend took me there and he had a peppermint angelfish swimming in his tank. At that time, people were kind of already keeping peppermint angelfishes, so it wasn't like a shocking thing. I took a few photos of it. And then I found out after that that peppermint angelfish that was living in his tank was the same one on this book cover. And it was 21 years old.
That's a good aquarist.
As far as I'm aware, it's still alive today because I'm friends with him on Facebook now and I see him post photos of it now and then. The best part of this story is a few years later, I published a paper in Proceedings B, the Royal Society Journal, on angelfish hybrids. The photo that I took of that very fish, it got selected as the cover for the journal issue.
We do wider reading in the show notes, so send us a link to the cover.
And then I just put it side by side. I'm like, this fish it's been alive for so long that it's been on the cover of an aquarium reference book and the cover of a Royal Society journal.
It's bookended your career. The fish is going to outlive us all.
As a fish nerd, I can't tell you how crazy that is to me.
It's your career path. Your career path as like a spirit animal.
Yeah, and I tell my students now and like, really early career researchers that, they get worried about like, oh, I didn't really do this. I didn't volunteer at a museum when I was after high school. I didn't really do this internship thing. Am I going to get a career? I'm like, you can get a career in anything you want as long as you're just really determined and passionate about it because you don't need to follow a strict career path to get to where you want to be in life.
I gave that piece of advice this week. Don't rush. Don't look at everyone around you. And it was the really passionate people who really wanted to do it that made it. The really smart people, if their heart wasn't in it, they're earning far more money in banking.
Yeah. The passion that you have for a certain thing will take you very far in life, I think.
We usually end on a fun one, although I feel this has been a really fun one, and you may have already answered this question, but what is the best party you've ever been to?
The best party I've ever been to. My favorite party so far has been Marine Aquarium Conference of North America in Denver 2015. That was the first time I met Louise Russia. I have a friend now, Laura Birnbaum. If you're listening, hi, I miss you. She throws the best after parties. And I remember she had this hotel room and she invited a whole bunch of people. And that was the first time I tried Venezuelan rum, which I still love very, very much. It's probably my second favorite after gin. I met Luis at that party, but I think the best, part of the whole experience for me was just how inviting and freeing it was being surrounded by fish nerds. And
You could let the mask off.
I could, there was no mask to be put on. Everyone was just who they were. And everyone was just having a big fat time laughing and talking about fishes. And I remember telling Louise, like, I read a peer-reviewed paper about a fish ID and I think it was wrong. And who am I to say that something was wrong, because I was still in high school. I wasn't anything. And Louise was like, oh, if it's wrong, it's wrong. And I was just like, oh my God, like, am I like being accepted right now as one of the fish geeks of the world? And I can't distill the one thing about that party or that night that made it really fun. But I think it was just the fact that there was such an eclectic mix of people from the aquarium trade and the hobby and the industry and science all having a great time laughing and talking about fishes. But man, it's just not that serious. It's literally you're just here for fishes.
Yeah, it can just be fun. It doesn't have to
can
be,
just be fun.
Stressful and
Yeah.
scary. And
Yeah, and I think I take that mindset with me into all the conferences and student events that I go to now is that like, at the end of the day, like there's no need to be anxious or nervous about talking to anyone.
I think people have been continually surprised when they get hold of these people who they hold in this lofty regard with just how nice they are and how happy they are to talk about.
Oh,
It's so nice.
I tell you, I can tell you right now, honestly, from personal experience and like literally what happened like 2 weeks ago at IPFC. If you're a student, okay, I'm talking to you now. If you're sitting at home now listening to this podcast, if you are a student and you are at a conference and if you see someone that you have held in high regard and you want to talk to them, please approach them, say hi to them because we are begging. We cannot be any happier to have someone come up to us and talk about fishes. So it is very scary. I get it. But at the end of the day, what excites you excites us too.
And even the older guard are rejuvenated by it.
Yes.
Oh, I used to be like that. And they get a little boost from it.
I talked about IPFC, the last Indo-Pacific Fish Conference, being very student heavy. And I remember there was a kid, his name's Daniel Yu from Hong Kong. He has a collection in his house of hundreds of jars of fishes that he would just buy from the fish market and put in alcohol and just keep them. And when he found out that we were at IPFC, he flew all the way from Hong Kong with his mum to Taiwan to join the conference just to meet some of his idols. And I remember introducing him to Richard Pyle and Brian Greene. And watching him interact with Richard literally was the same reaction that I had when I met Richard for the first time when I was a teenager, recognizing myself as like someone who's an early career researcher, and there are people that are still up and coming who are still excitable, and it's about fanning the flame and keeping it alive.
Wow, what a lovely motivating way to end.
Oh, I know. Isn't that just nice?
I like
to
it.
end on a...
Oh, Kai, that was wonderful. That was so much fun. Thank you for coming on and having a
Thank you,
chat with
Thom.
us.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Had a lot of fun.
So I let that interview run a little bit longer because we were having such gin-fueled fun and the chat was going in some interesting places. I don't want to be too fishy though. I know I'm really guilty of that. So I did want to share the project of another friend of the show. You might remember Teresa Amaro from our Canyons episode. She has also been doing some extreme technical diving, and I got her to record a little bit about her project as well, just to stop it being too fishy.
Hi, Thom. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a great way to let people know about the project. So I'm leading this project already for almost 3 years. The name of the project is COAST, and it means Conservation of Marine Ecosystems around Santo Cabo Verde, implications for policy and society. The main objective is actually to recommend marine protected areas. But for that, and because this place was actually very near to science, we had to collect baseline data from all kinds of disciplines. Why I actually chose this place? It was because I went there as a diver, and then whenever I was diving there, I was like, wow, my God, this is like really, really beautiful. Because I kept on going as a diver. There was one time that the owner of the diving center asked me if I wanted to manage the diving center for 3 months. So I decided to do this. I left Portugal and I went to Cabo Verde in Africa. And whenever I was like diving, you know, I had this idea, gosh, this is so beautiful, so unique. And people are so unique as well that we need to write a project to hear. Because I was always at sea, I talked a lot with fishermen. They complain about the reduction of fish in their catches. I decided whenever I went away to build a team, a very multidisciplinary team. We are collecting data from all kinds of disciplines. In terms of biology, I actually established a kind of a fisherman network around the island. With their help, I rent their boats and then we go diving. So I have maybe 20 stations where I have collected data. In the beginning of the project, we were going to only go to 20 meters, but then we found these black coral forests. And so I went down, but because these black coral forests were so unique, so beautiful, we start also measuring them. I had also to change my way of diving, so I'm using a rebreather. So during COVID, I went to do a course, and it's fantastic because I can stay much longer in the water. Really cool, actually. It's a different way of diving, and I can go deeper to these black coral forests and actually get more data. Of course, I'm aware that we can have drop cams, for instance, and BREVs to access also these diversity data. But this project didn't have actually that much money. It was actually much better to be the ROV. For these deeper data, I have 2 divers with me. They are not scientists, so they are only technical divers. And it's quite funny that by now they know how to measure corals. It's really funny. Also, it's important for this project, I only work with the locals. So all the money that I have goes to the locals. So I have these fishermen, I rent their boats. I also learn a lot with them because they know much more than I do. I spend my life studying and they spend their life at sea, and they know much more actually than I do. So I'm learning a lot. So at this point, we are already in the phase of publishing our results. We already know, according to the data, which area we actually would like to recommend to be a marine protected area. This cannot be done just by me. I organized a workshop together with Christina Pittet, one of the researchers at the University of Aveiro. She does economics. And so she went through the islands. She did a lot of interviews. And together we organized a workshop with the mayor and with the Institute of the Government, from the NGOs, and also from the fishermen, with the fishermen. And then together we wanted to recommend an area that should be protected. And the good thing is that scientifically saying, I would recommend a certain area of the island, and this is actually in accordance with what the fishermen want. So it's actually really nice. So this was the first workshop in 2024, and now we are going back there in October, and we have much more data as well. I just got this paper published with black corals and gorgonians, and now I'm gonna have the pleasure to have the Minister of the Sea as well, and we are trying now to go a little bit beyond of only recommending. Let's see if it works. Also, I think by working, with the fishermen, but also interacting a lot with the other stakeholders. I was just invited to participate on a meeting with the Republic President of Cabo Verde in October, where we're going to discuss the ocean in Cabo Verde. More news to come. Bye-bye, and thank you once again.
As promised, we will round out with a coffee with Andrew to talk about the recent spate of oarfish strandings, what that could mean as an omen for the future, and just generally about how cool these animals are and how rarely we see them. No wonder people make up stories about them when they do. So to round us off, here's Coffee with Andrew.
Coffee's ready.
Cheers.
Cheers. So covered on the news on this episode is we've had a spate of doom in this part of the world.
Yes, we're all going to die.
3 oarfish strandings, one in Tasmania on the east coast, was it? So
Yes, I think
towards
that's
us.
right, yeah.
And then one outside of Christchurch, was it?
Yes,
here?
a place called Birdlings Flat, and then one down further south, just out from the Otago Harbour, Aramoana.
So beautiful, beautiful fish, very, very big, cool fish. But whenever one of these turns up, the media does a regular cycle.
Yeah, it's predictable, completely
Yeah.
predictable. It's just they're so incredibly striking. I mean, you see a fish wash up on the beach, you've got in your mind, fish look like this. And then one of these comes ashore, which completely confounds everything you've ever thought about fish. They're just so striking, everybody goes crazy.
And it sticks in the human mind. Humans are very good at finding patterns or looking for patterns. And so you would remember the strange fish you saw, and then you would certainly remember a huge earthquake.
It's also been linked to some of their cousins, like the agrosteichthyes, the ribbonfish, and dealfishes too.
They're really easy to get mixed up.
Yes.
Quite a lot of the oarfish sightings are actually the dealfish, aren't they? Because it's a slightly different proportion to the head. It's just less grand.
Different body length and all this kind of stuff. But if you go through the older papers, particularly there was a guy called Charles McCann who conflated them all together. He thought one was a male and one was a female, which wasn't a bad idea, but
We've seen weirder ones.
yeah. Well, if you're going to be weird, let's be weird, really weird. But no, there are several species across 2 families. You've also got the inkfishes, as they're called, squirt ink up their cloaca. Yes, unicorn fish and things like that. Yeah, quite amazing.
Such a magical name for something that poops ink.
Poops ink.
And pygmy sperm whales do that as well. Did you know that?
Yeah, I don't know. They just eat a lot of squid. And the other interesting thing is, many, many years ago, I was privileged to be on a paper with Bob McDowell, and a juvenile ribbonfish was picked up alive in the process of stranding itself in the outer Marlborough Sounds. And both the person who picked it up and his mother, who also picked it up, experienced mild electrical shocks. Bob said he had every reason to believe the account because the guy was a physicist, I think. So he wasn't going to be making crap up. So yeah, it's rather interesting. There's still a lot to learn about these very fragile, strange fishes.
That just turn up now and again. We've got some more recent information on them because they used to be pretty mysterious and pretty weird. There's a piece of footage, maybe in the last 5 years, of divers diving with them.
Multiple pictures of divers with them. One turned up in National Geographic that was just stunning. Fish just hanging vertically in the water column. And the long thin pelvic fins with those big sort of flattened ends that look like oars out from the side of its body, looking as though it was rowing itself along. But in fact, they're going up and down just by rippling that dorsal fin.
And the speed they could go up and down.
Yes,
I was
it's
really
very, very fast.
impressed. They can move up and down very, very quickly, and side to side motion not so good.
Yeah, but I guess that moving up and down very, very quickly, you're a sailor on a boat, looking over the side, longing for home, and there this thing appears. And then it disappears. Hence, we believe the sea serpent myth was born.
I could believe it.
Oh, yeah. Getting back to his cousin, the ribbonfish, we've had 2 here in Wellington that were spotted by divers on the south coast before that was gazetted as a marine reserve. And this thing was apparently swimming strongly like an eel in amongst the kelp. And it freaked them out, so they speared it, as you do. They brought it in to work, saying, what the hell is this? And so we've got these 2 big specimens.
I could believe that they've got 2 modes of swimming. That they've got this elevator up and down, and then they still can do the aguiliform, the snake-like movement. But with such a long body and that ribbon proportion to it, I can imagine that's quite difficult for them.
Very, very soft flesh, and the bones almost paper thin, but they get their strength from crenulations. So all this is a weight-saving device. So if you can get as close to being the same density as water, you're not swimming constantly to maintain your position in the water column because they don't have a swim bladder.
When you think of that body form, it wouldn't work very well.
No.
You'd have a little balloon up in your body.
Or a long, skinny balloon that goes all the way down. They do have a postclavicle cecum where the gut loops back past the bum. There was one that Carl and I opened up just to see what it had been eating. And it was packed from the mouth right the way back to far into the post-clavicle cecum with euphorsids.
Crustaceans.
Absolutely chocker with euphorsids. They've got this weird John Dory-like mouth that can just shoot out, obviously just scooping up and schooling these.
You can see them sort of going up and down, feeding.
Yeah.
Yeah, like an elevator. So when such a striking beastie turns up, and humans being humans, what have we blamed them for?
Well, we blame them for earthquakes.
Yeah.
And here we are on the rim of fire. This came out of Japan. It was thought to be a messenger of the sea dragon god's palace coming ashore, warning humans there's going to be an earthquake. There was this paper published in 2019 by 4 geophysicists, I think. They tried to see if there was any correlation between strandings and earthquakes.
And this was in the Journal of Seismology.
Yes.
It wasn't a fun sort of little
wasn't
quirky
Worm Runner's
journal.
Digest.
It was genuine seismologists wondering, should we pay attention to these fish?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is sort of something that just keeps coming back again and again and again. And their conclusion was, no, it's completely artificial. You remember it, but you forget about all those days you found one on the beach and there wasn't an earthquake.
Or it sticks in your mind so much until something significant happens. It would be interesting to look at the time gap, is it the next day? Is it a week? Is it a month? Because it's just such a thing to find.
Yeah.
I can see how it would lodge in people's minds.
So if we go back to our heritage,
our neck of the woods, it's a very different
the other way
story.
around.
Yeah.
No. The Latin name actually means king of the herring. The herring fishermen all through the North Sea, it's a sign of a rich harvest. And in fact, if you harmed one,
yes,
you would be punished with a poor harvest.
Yeah, you've got to be nice to them.
You've got to be nice to the king of the herring. It's funny how people sort of do link these things together. As you say, it's become clickbait that just keeps on going.
Every time one strands, Doomfish is in the title.
Yes.
We're not going to get rid of that anytime soon.
No. And it's a good excuse for us to sort of keep publicising.
Exactly.
We'll
jump on the back
We're
of that.
shameless. But we did try to get both the Aramoana and I looked at the Birdling's flat specimen, but am I allowed to call them dump chickens?
The seagulls. Seagulls find them before we do.
Yeah, and they seem to have a thing for the head. They just demolish the head.
That's what all the good stuff is, the livery stuff.
All fishy goodnesses must be locked up in the head.
Yeah, they're spectacular fish, but they just don't last. The colours fade and they decompose very, very quickly. So.
And Birdling's Flat's a stony beach. I think what happens is if they get in just too close to shore, they just get tumbled in the waves.
Yeah, they're not strong enough to get themselves back out.
No.
Was probably in a bad way to end up there in the first place.
Everyone I've sort of read about who've tried to eat it said, yeah, it's sort of something you say you did once.
Yeah, it's for the novelty.
Yeah, novelty and no other reason. Tyson, in his book, is adamant that they're so that sharks won't even eat them. But it was interesting. Clive got an inquiry about one and had a great big semicircular bite out of it, which was a shark bite.
There's some that look very much like
cookie
cutter marks in them as well. I think.
No, this looked like a blue shark or something. It was the whole flesh just scalloped out.
There's something has a go.
Maybe
it doesn't come back for a second bite. They are the longest fish, 8 meters reliably, and then there's even stories of 11, isn't there? But they're not so substantiated. That's huge. That's 4 adults.
Yep.
4 quite tall men.
And they're quite heavy with that length. There's the famous picture of those American servicemen holding one, and you often see it in a Thai restaurant or a Vietnamese restaurant from that area. And the mythology was that the American soldiers had killed the queen of the Mekong, or it was a goddess, and that this particular goddess was responsible for good fortune, caring for the river and all that. Sadly, only one of those statements is correct. Those are American servicemen.
I know that picture. I didn't know it had that interpretation.
Yes. One, they're never in the rivers. And two, the thing was beach casts in California. This was American servicemen out for a run along the beach. And you see these guys, they're powerfully built and they're struggling to hold it. This enormous fish.
And you'd say that was AI now.
Yes,
That's
I
an
know.
incredible image.
I know. The other interesting thing is that we've discovered that many of these fish, they say that there's no scales. There are scales, they're just incredibly thin.
Mm.
And we discovered this with a ribbon fish that we got in Wellington Harbour, Carl and I, and we put it on a piece of black corrugated plastic so that it didn't bend and snap. When the wet surface dried off, it was covered in these tiny little dots. And I had a close look at them. They're scales.
Like a butterfly's wings.
Yeah. And if you look at the body of the fish, they've got little raised dimples. And on the top of each dimple is like a cap, is a scale.
It's what's giving that weird depth to the iridescence. It's not just
Maybe.
reflective. There's
No.
a void to it. You sort of fall into it. And I can imagine it can disappear whenever it likes in the open water.
Yes.
It looks like the downwelling light.
So you've got sort of black swath across the nose. So if you're looking down on it, it's black against dark blue black. If you're looking sideways at it, it's reflecting the light back at the same wavelength as the light behind it. And then if the oarfish, of course, you've got those dappling marks, which look like the sunlight dappling through the water. Quite incredible, I think. These wonderful, bizarre, and let's face it, beautiful creatures.
Do you have anything else you want to...
If you stop recording, I'll tell you all about something.
Oh, well, sorry, folks. This one's just for me. In a hurry. We'll deep see you next time. We abyss you already. I'm going to go get the gossip and no, you can't have it. See you next time.
Were any of them man-sized squid?
Oh, who's to say?
I mean, it's important we compare squid to a thing. So they're man-sized, or are they? Were any of them estimated to be longer than a London bus?
Could they be hand blown in glass?
Blown in glass.
That's my new scale. Is could they be hand blown in glass?
Could you hand blow a London bus in glass?
Oh,
And then a bus is man-sized because there's a man already in it who's driving it.
that's true.
So
That's true.
It
It's
ticks
designed to
we're
fit
ticking
them.
all the boxes here for a big squid. How many squid can you fit in a bus?
They stack really well.
I bet they do. I bet they do.
They do. We've got these enormous tanks. You will have seen them, and certain things stack better than others. So we've got the squid-shaped tank, which holds more giant and colossal squid than any other collection, I think. And they're lovely. They just stack up all nice. Sharks is the worst thing to try and get into a tank because they're just pointy in all directions. They take up loads of space.
Apparently, if you just cut their fins off, they're much more torpedo-shaped and easier to stack.
This is true. I should do that. Just do self-assembly them.
Yeah. And then preserve them in a square tube.
Oh.
Yeah.
What if I just mince them into a paste and then I can extrude them as I need?
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, just reassemble it.
Vacuum pack them.